Hi, I'm Kate Gunthert. I'm the director of the Stress and Emotion Lab at American University. People are asking us to comment on the stress impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. It's hard to even summarize because the stress of the pandemic isn't a stressor. It's a million different stressors with a million different meanings to people. So we're talking about loss of loved ones, fears for one's own health, systemic inequities that translate into higher risk for people of color. We're talking about loneliness and missed graduations and kids at home while trying to work. And so the list goes on and on. In stress and coping research, we talk a lot about how the person's individual perception of stressors really drives their emotional response. So truly, every worry and every loss is very unique to each person. But what is clear is that the levels of stress right now are up across the board, and it's important to talk about the mental health aspects of this pandemic. It might be helpful to understand the body's biological stress response as we navigate the stress of the pandemic. So our body's biological stress response is best suited for quick, acute threats. People have heard of the fight or flight response, which is basically that the body mobilizes resources to run or to fight or protect our young. So when we detect threat, our sort of stress response activates and our blood pumps at a faster rate, our breathing speeds up, all to help us deal with a physical challenge. So imagine you're being chased by an animal. You get that surge in energy and sort of activation to run. And so in an acute threat, that would happen and your stress response would go up, and then hopefully you've escaped the animal within a few minutes and your stress response goes back down. Now, the stress response served an important function, but the problem with the pandemic and other modern stressors is that our stress response goes up, but then we keep feeling threat, we keep seeing threat, and so it stays elevated and it doesn't come back down. And at that point, the stress response itself ends up sort of wearing us down physically and emotionally. So a lot of people are looking for ways to decrease anxiety right now. That's important, but I think the trick to mental health right now will be to accept some level of anxiety and to figure out when to purposely dial it down. Anxiety is uncomfortable, so there's often an impulse to suppress it or run away from it. But anxiety isn't inherently a bad thing. It really depends on the context, the level of anxiety, and the function it serves. So anxiety has an important function, which is to keep us alert to threat. It sharpens our attention to threat, and it motivates us to avoid it. And right now, anxiety is part of the toolbox that helps keep us safe. So our anxiety surrounding COVID is what keeps us remembering to keep the 6 feet of distance. When our masks are feeling uncomfortable, anxiety is what drives us to keep the mask on rather than taking it off to help keep us safe. So it's important to notice the anxiety and to accept that some level of anxiety is adaptive. But like I said before, it is depleting when the stress keeps going on and on and on. So at that point, you do want to look for ways to step back and dial down the anxiety. So what are some suggestions to dial back the anxiety? There's obviously no one size fits all, and very much depends on your circumstances and resources and preferences, but I'll give a few ideas. The first thing I would bring up is social connections. One of the most consistent findings in the stress and coping literature is the stress buffering effect of social connections. I think right now a lot of us feel sad that it feels not the same to see friends via social distance walks or Zoom, but it is something. And I think people underestimate how important it is. We are social creatures and we're at our best when we feel our ties to other people. I would advise looking for ways to manage the cognitive load of this pandemic. And so it's good and important to stay informed of the news, but you might need to observe how the news cycle is impacting your anxiety and choose to limit the amount, particularly before you go to bed. That steady stream of constant news can keep the sense of vulnerability high, which keeps the stress response high. I'd also advise to look for the good in the world. There's a lot of awful news right now, and I think seeing the good in people and in our environments helps us to grasp hope and feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. I think that's why John Krasinski's Some Good News broadcast was so popular. It filled a need that people were really needing some healing that comes with seeing the good. Along with seeing the good, I'd say to be the good. Research suggests that altruism, or engaging in helpful behaviors, is not only good for the receiver, but for the giver as well. When we're helping others, it connects us to a sense of meaning in our life, to a sense of community, and to a sense of being part of something bigger than ourselves. And finally, I would advise to pay attention to your sleep. This is one you always hear, but there's a good reason you always hear it. Prioritizing sleep is helpful for mood regulation. We talk about sleep as a biobehavioral resource, meaning when we're well rested, we're better equipped to handle threat. And so sleep is a resource that helps us modulate the stress response. So we have talked about medium levels of anxiety being helpful, but it's important to recognize when anxiety gets too overwhelming. And that tends to be when it's harming more than it's helping. So sometimes anxiety is so tense that it's really interfering with our lives. We can't concentrate, we can't sleep, we feel tense all the time, we experience shortness of breath. At that point, I'd say it'd be very helpful to reach out for more support. I've been happy to see how therapists have been quick to adapt to the pandemic by offering telehealth options. So it's nice that right now you don't even have to go into an office to see anybody to seek help. Connecting with an online therapist can help you to find strategies to cope, particularly when the uncertainty and worry feel overwhelming. So I hope some of these thoughts were helpful and that you're doing okay as you navigate these stressful times.